My daughter sent me a text that broke my heart. She told me I wasn't invited anymore, because her husband said it's best I stay away. I stared at those words, wondering how the little girl I raised could now be pushed away from me like a stranger. Ever since she married him, I felt her slipping further from my life, but I never thought she'd cut me out completely. What I didn't know then was that this text was only the beginning of something much darker. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. That night, as I held the gift I had prepared for her birthday, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown number. I still remember that night like it was yesterday. I was standing in my kitchen, carefully wrapping a small box. Inside was a silver bracelet. Not just any bracelet, it belonged to my late wife Claire. Elena, my daughter, used to play with it when she was little. I thought giving it to her on her birthday would remind her of her mother, remind her of the bond we once shared. I kept telling myself this dinner would be the start of something new. Our relationship had been strained ever since she married Grant, but tonight, I believed we could finally sit down, eat together, and heal. I wanted my daughter back. I wanted to laugh with her again like we used to. I was rehearsing in my head what I'd say when I saw her. "Happy birthday, sweetheart. Your mom would be so proud of you." Just imagining her smile gave me hope. Then my phone buzzed. At first I didn't think much of it. Maybe it was Elena asking if I needed directions to her place, or maybe she wanted me to pick up a cake on the way. My hands were shaking a little as I unlocked the screen, but what I read shattered me. "You're not coming. My husband says it's best you leave." For a few seconds I couldn't breathe. I just stood there staring at the screen, my chest tightening like someone had punched me. My throat burned, and I whispered out loud, "What? No, Elena, you can't mean this." I read the text again, word for word. Each time it cut deeper. She wasn't just canceling dinner, she was canceling me. I sat down at the table, the bracelet box still in my hands. My mind raced. Was this really her choice, or did Grant force her to send it? He never liked me, he always treated me like an outsider, even though I'm her father. I told myself maybe she typed it under pressure. Maybe he was standing right there, telling her what to say. I wanted to believe that. I had to believe that. But then, another buzz, a second notification, this time from an unknown number. I opened it, and my blood went cold. "Stay away, or you'll regret it." My heart pounded. My hands trembled as I read it again and again. This wasn't just about Elena not wanting me there. This was a threat. Someone wanted me gone, silenced. I stood up, pacing across the room. My thoughts were all over the place. Who sent that? Was it Grant? One of his friends? Or maybe someone else tied to him? The timing was too perfect to be a coincidence. I looked down at the bracelet box. For years I had been saving it for this moment. Now it just sat there like a cruel reminder that my daughter didn't want me near her. Tears burned my eyes, but I forced myself not to cry. Not yet. I clenched my fists and told myself I will not let him take her away from me. Not like this. I thought about calling Elena, demanding to know the truth. But I stopped myself. If she really was under his control, if he was standing there listening, my call could only make things worse. Instead I sat in silence. The room felt empty. The sound of the refrigerator humming was the only thing I heard. I looked around at the walls, the photos of Elena growing up, the memories frozen in frames. In every picture, it was just me and her. Smiling, laughing, living. And now, I was being erased. I picked up my phone again, staring at her message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't type a single word. What could I even say? Beg her to fight her own husband? Tell her I'd never leave her side? None of it felt right. That night I barely slept. I just lay in bed, gripping my phone, reading the words over and over. Each time they cut deeper. "You're not coming. My husband says it's best you leave. Stay away, or you'll regret it." I didn't know what to believe. Was Elena still my daughter, the girl who once promised she'd never leave me? Or was she already gone, trapped in his world? One thing I did know, this wasn't over. It couldn't be. A father doesn't just walk away. And deep down, I felt it. This was only the beginning of something much darker. After that text, I couldn't sit still. My mind wouldn't stop racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Elena's face. Was she safe? Was she scared? Or was she already slipping away from me for good? That night, I found myself behind the wheel. I didn't even plan it. My hands just turned the key, and before I knew it, I was driving toward her neighborhood. I told myself I only wanted to check on her, just to see her house, just to know she was all right. I parked a block away, in the shadows where no one could see me. The engine ticked softly as it cooled, but my heart was pounding too loud for me to notice. I leaned forward, staring through the windshield. Her house glowed warmly from the inside. Through the living room window, I saw them. Grant was there, laughing loudly, his arm resting casually on the couch. Elena sat beside him, forcing a smile. Even from that distance, I could see it wasn't real. Her lips curved, but her eyes were empty. It felt like a knife in my chest. That was my daughter, the little girl I had raised, sitting there like a stranger, and I was on the outside watching, erased from her life. I gripped the steering wheel so hard, my knuckles turned white. I whispered to myself, "He's taking her from me. He's trying to erase me." I sat there for what felt like hours, but eventually, I drove back home. The whole way my chest ached, like I couldn't breathe. When I walked into my house, Iris McConnell was waiting. Iris had been a close friend of mine for years. She knew me better than most. As soon as she saw my face, she asked, "Malcolm, what happened?" I told her everything. The text, the threat, the way Elena looked through that window, smiling like someone told her she had to. I paced across the room as I spoke, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Iris listened quietly, her arms folded. When I finally stopped, she sighed deeply. "Malcolm," she said, "this isn't just about Grant being difficult. This is control. I've seen this before. Men like him don't just keep their wives close, they trap them. Piece by piece, until they don't even remember who they are anymore." Her words hit me hard. My throat tightened. I sank into a chair, burying my face in my hands. That night, I couldn't stop my mind from going backward. Memories came flooding in. Elena as a little girl, running across the yard with her hair flying in the wind. Elena sitting on the kitchen counter, laughing as I burned pancakes on a Saturday morning. Elena holding my hand at Claire's funeral, whispering through tears, "We'll be okay, Dad." I raised her alone after her mother died. I gave her everything I had. I wasn't perfect, but I tried, and now the guilt burned inside me. Was this my fault? Did I fail her somewhere along the way? Did I push her towards someone like Grant, because I wasn't enough? I couldn't answer those questions, but I did know one thing. I wasn't going to lose her. Not without a fight. I sat in the silence of my living room and made a vow to myself. A quiet vow, but stronger than anything I had ever promised before. I will not let him take her from me. No matter the cost, I will not let him win. As if the night wanted to test me, something unexpected happened. A noise outside, soft footsteps on the porch, then the faint sound of paper sliding under my door. I froze. Slowly I walked to the front door and bent down. An envelope lay there on the floor. My stomach twisted as I picked it up. No name, no return address, just a plain white envelope. With shaky hands, I tore it open. Inside was a single photograph. It was Elena, my daughter, but not smiling this time, not pretending. Her eyes were wide with fear, her face pale. She looked terrified. My blood ran cold. My hands gripped the picture as anger and fear crashed over me all at once. Someone wanted me to see this. Someone wanted me to know, and in that moment I realized, this was much bigger than I thought. I couldn't ignore that photo. It sat on my kitchen table like an accusation. Elena's face in that picture haunted me. I kept turning it over with my thumb, trying to find some explanation. There was none. The next morning, I drove to her workplace. I told myself I'd keep my distance. I only wanted to see her, just to know she was okay. But when I walked up to the building, my heart was already racing. I found her outside, near the side entrance. She was small against the bright morning. She looked up when she heard my footsteps. For a second, I almost thought she'd run into my arms. Instead, she looked like someone frightened of a sudden noise. She kept glancing over her shoulder. Her voice was a whisper when she spoke. "Dad, I can't talk." Those words hit me hard. I reached out and touched her arm. She flinched. "Elena," I said, "please, come home tonight. Just dinner. One night. Let's try." She looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I can't," she said. Her lip trembled. "I'm sorry." I tried to reason. "Is Grant there? Is he telling you not to?" I stopped. I didn't want to say his name too loud. She shivered like the name itself could bring trouble. Then he appeared, like he owned the place. Grant walked up behind her and put his arm around her shoulders. It was a small move, but it felt like a claim. His smile was slow and controlled. He looked at me with a calm I hated. "Malcolm," he said, "respect boundaries." His voice was a warning dressed as politeness. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The way he stood told me the person beside him was his, not mine. Elena forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dad, please," she whispered. "Not here." I could see something on her wrist when she pulled her sleeve down to hide it. A faint bruise. It was small, almost new. She tucked her hand into her pocket like she wanted to hide it from me and from the world. My stomach turned. I remembered those long nights when she was a child, the way she used to fall and get right back up. I remembered sitting beside Claire's hospital bed and promising I'd always be there for her. I had raised her on my own. I had held her through nightmares, and now someone was using fear to keep her quiet. I wanted to grab her and pull her away. I wanted to tell the world who Grant really was. Instead, I stood there, helpless. I felt years of failure pressed down on me. Maybe I had not done enough. Maybe I had let gaps grow between us. Guilt burned inside me like acid. "Malcolm, leave my wife alone," Grant said, voice low. He stepped closer, up close. I could smell his cologne. It was expensive. It smelled like everything he used to show off with money control. "You don't tell me what to do," I said. My voice came out sharper than I wanted. I forced myself to lower it. "I'm her father." Grant's eyes were cold. "Then act like it, respect boundaries." He turned and guided Elena toward the door like a man steering a prize. She went with him. Her shoulders were hunched. She didn't look back. When they were inside, I stood on the sidewalk for a long time. People walked by, none of them noticing the war that had just happened in front of the building. The city kept its busy pace, unconcerned. I felt invisible. That night I went home and barely slept. I wanted to do something. I had to do something. I called Iris and told her every detail. She listened, her voice steady but worried. She said things I didn't want to hear, but needed to. "You can't rush into this, Malcolm Grayson," she said. "You need proof. You need a plan." Proof, plan. The words echoed in my head. I had a photo. I had a bruise. But the world needs more than a father's fear. It needs facts. It needs something that will hold up in court or at least make people listen. Late that night I heard a sound, glass breaking, a crash from the front room. My heart jumped into my throat. I ran to the window and saw shards on the floor. A rock had smashed right through my living room pane. There was a note taped to the remaining glass. I could just make out the handwriting. "Stay out of their marriage or you'll pay." Fear and anger mixed into something hot in my chest. Someone wanted to scare me away. They wanted me to stop, but the note did the opposite. It lit a fire inside me. I picked up the broken stone with gloved hands and looked at it for a long time. It was heavy. So was the message. Whoever sent it wanted me to be small, to be quiet, to accept loss. I had promised myself I wouldn't let that happen. I had promised I'd fight for Elena. The bruises, the silences, the threats, they all made my promise louder. I knew the next step. I needed help that could pierce this armor of silence. I needed someone who knew the law. I needed a plan that could stand up to threats and money and fear. Tomorrow I would find Julian Cross. I would tell him everything. I would not wait. The broken window and that note were still fresh in my mind when I made the call. I needed more than anger. I needed someone who could help me fight back the right way. That's when I called Julian Cross. Julian wasn't just any attorney. He had been a friend back when I worked at the city office. A sharp man, always careful, always playing by the book. If anyone could guide me, it was him. We met at his office the next morning. I sat across from him, gripping that photo of Elena with trembling hands. "Julian," I said, my voice tight, "I think she's in danger. I think Grant is hurting her." Julian leaned back in his chair, studying me. He didn't rush to speak. He never did. Finally he asked, "Do you have proof?" I hesitated. I saw bruises on her wrist, and this picture. Someone left it at my door. I slid the photo across the desk. He studied it for a long time, then looked back at me. His voice was calm but serious. "Malcolm, listen to me. I believe you, but the court doesn't work on suspicion. Without solid evidence, without witnesses, without reports, this will backfire. You could lose any chance of seeing her. You could even be painted as the problem." His words stung. I felt the heat rising in my chest. "So what am I supposed to do? Sit back and watch him break her down piece by piece?" Julian shook his head. "No, but you need to be smart. Anger will only play into his hands." I left his office with my fists clenched. I felt trapped. I was a father who could see the truth, but the law was blind. My own daughter was slipping away, and the system couldn't or wouldn't protect her. When I got home, Iris was there. She took one look at my face and asked, "What did Julian say?" I told her everything. She listened, her eyes steady, then placed her hand on mine. "Malcolm Grayson," she said softly, "you've always been a fighter. Elena knows it too. Don't you see? She's reaching out in silence. Every tear, every glance, every bruise she tries to hide, it's her way of asking for help. You can't give up on her now." Her words steadied me. She was right. I couldn't just sit around. If the law needed evidence, then I'd find it myself. That night, I sat down with my laptop and started digging. I typed in Grant's name, his business, his records. Hours slipped by as I followed every lead, every rumor, and slowly pieces started falling into place. There were whispers of fraud linked to his company, complaints from former employees that never made it to court, suspicious contracts signed under strange conditions. The deeper I went, the dirtier it looked. Grant wasn't just controlling Elena. He was hiding something much bigger. I leaned back in my chair, my mind buzzing. If I could connect him to fraud, to crime, maybe then people would listen. Maybe then I could tear down the image he used to trap my daughter. Iris checked on me around midnight. "You're still at it?" she asked. "I have to be," I said. "If the law wants evidence, I'll give them more than enough." "He won't win." She didn't argue. She just brought me coffee and left me to my work. It was well past 2 in the morning when I finally pushed away from the desk. My eyes burned, my back ached. I stepped outside for air, hoping the cool night would clear my head. That's when I heard it, the piercing sound of my car alarm. My stomach dropped. I rushed across the driveway, my heart pounding. The lights were flashing, the horn blaring. I yanked the door open, but the car was empty. Then I saw it, pinned under the wipers, wings spread, was a dead bird. I froze. My hands shook as I pulled it away. It wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. It was a message. Another threat. Stay out. Stop digging, or this is what happens. I stood there in the driveway, the alarm echoing through the night, my neighbors' lights flicking on in their windows. My breath came in sharp bursts. Fear pressed on me, but anger pushed back harder. Whoever left that bird thought I'd back down. They thought fear would break me, but I wasn't broken. Not yet. I looked up into the darkness of the street and made myself another promise. "They think they can scare me," I whispered, "but they don't know me. They don't know what a father will do." And in that moment I knew, I wasn't just fighting for Elena anymore. I was at war with whoever thought they could control her and silence me. I couldn't get the image of that dead bird out of my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw its wings pinned down, its body broken. It was a warning, but instead of scaring me, it fueled me. I knew I had to push harder. Julian had told me I needed evidence. Iris had told me Elena was silently crying for help. So I started following every lead I could. That's how I came across the name of a man who used to work for Grant. A man who'd left his company suddenly, under strange circumstances. His name was Kyle. I found him through an online forum, then finally tracked down where he lived. an old apartment complex on the edge of town. I showed up at his door one afternoon, not sure if he would even talk to me. When he opened the door, he looked nervous. His eyes darted left and right like he was expecting someone to be watching. "What do you want?" he asked. "I just need to know the truth about Grant Holloway," I said. My voice shook, but I stood firm. "He's married to my daughter, and I think she's in danger." Kyle's face hardened. He started to close the door, but I pressed on. "Please, I'm not a cop. I'm just a father. A father trying to save his daughter." Something in my voice must have reached him because he stopped. He sighed, then motioned for me to come in. Inside, the place was dark and messy. He sat down at the edge of the couch, rubbing his hands together. "You don't know what you're asking," he muttered. "Then tell me," I said. "Because right now I know nothing except that my daughter is trapped with him." Kyle leaned forward, his voice low. "Grant isn't who you think he is. He's always been like this, controlling. Manipulative, dangerous." My stomach tightened. I asked, "You've seen it?" He nodded. "Not just seen, I watched it destroy people. 2 women before your daughter, both of them were with him. Both of them ended up running away. One went clear across the country, the other just vanished from town. And you know what's worse?" I leaned in. "What?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "They didn't run because they wanted to. They ran because they were scared. Scared of him. Scared of what he'd do if they stayed." My chest felt heavy. Elena wasn't his first victim, she was just the latest. But Kyle wasn't finished, and when those women tried to speak up, when they thought about going to the police, his mother Beatrice Holloway showed up, cold as ice, paid them off. Bought their silence, the Holloways cover for each other. It's not just Grant, it's his whole family. The room spun around me. This wasn't just a bad husband. This was a system. A family built on lies and intimidation. I sat back, my hands trembling. "You're saying his mother knew. She helped him." Kyle's eyes met mine. "I'm saying she made sure no one ever dared to cross him." I left that apartment with my head burning. Rage, fear, shock, all twisted together. I thought I was fighting one man, but now I knew it's bigger, much bigger. That evening, I couldn't stay silent. I drove to Elena's workplace and waited until she came out. When she saw me, she froze. Her eyes darted around, like she was afraid of being seen with me. "Elena, please," I begged. "Just listen, just for a minute." She shook her head. "Dad, I can't." "Yes, you can." I cut in. "I spoke to someone. Someone who worked for Grant. He told me about the women before you. About how they were scared into running away, and about Beatrice. About how she paid them off to keep quiet. Elena, this isn't just Grant, it's his family. They've been doing this for years." Her eyes filled with tears. She looked down at the ground, her shoulders trembling. "Dad," her voice broke. Then she looked back up, her eyes shining with pain. "You don't know half of it." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" I asked. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, I felt the air shift. Grant's shadow fell over us. He walked up slowly, wrapping his arm around Elena like she was a trophy he owned. His eyes locked onto mine, cold, empty, daring me. "Boundaries, Malcolm," he said smoothly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "You'd do well to remember them." I wanted to lunge at him, to tear that smug look off his face, but I froze. For Elena's sake, I froze. He tightened his grip on her and led her away, never breaking eye contact with me. His look said everything. "Try me. See what happens." I stood there in the parking lot, shaking, Elena's unfinished words echoing in my mind. "Dad, you don't know half of it." After that encounter in the parking lot, I couldn't shake Elena's words. "Dad, you don't know half of it." They rang in my ears day and night. What was she hiding? What was Grant keeping from me? I decided I couldn't wait for answers to come to me. I had to go out and get them. So I started shadowing Grant. I knew it was risky. I knew if he caught me, it could end badly. But I didn't care. My daughter's life was worth the risk. For 3 days I followed him. I stayed back far enough so he wouldn't notice me. I saw him go to his office. I saw him meet clients. He acted like a polished businessman, always smiling, always shaking hands. To strangers, he looked respectable, but I knew better. On the 4th day, I saw something that froze my blood. Grant pulled up outside a restaurant on the west side of the city, a place where deals were made in the shadows. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, keeping low. Inside, through the window, I saw him. He wasn't alone. Sitting across from him was Dexter Vaughn. The name hit me like a punch. Years ago, I had exposed Dexter for corruption when I worked at the city office. He had been involved in shady contracts, stealing taxpayer money. That man had tried to destroy my career. If it weren't for proof I uncovered, he would have gotten away with it. And now there he was, laughing, shaking hands with Grant. I felt the blood drain from my face. Grant hadn't just trapped Elena, he was making alliances with my oldest enemies. I stood there, fists clenched, watching the 2 men lean close, whispering, exchanging papers. My mind spun. What were they planning? Why would Grant tie himself to a man like Dexter? I walked away before they could see me. My head buzzed with fear and rage. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was a war. When I got home that night, Iris noticed my pale face. "What happened?" she asked. I told her what I saw. I told her Dexter Vaughn's name. Her eyes widened. She knew the history. She knew what that man had done to me. "Malcolm," she whispered, gripping my arm. "You're walking into dangerous territory. These men don't play fair. They won't hesitate to strike. You're making enemies who would rather bury you than face the truth." Her words shook me, but I couldn't stop. "Iris, Elena is caught in this web. I can't walk away." She closed her eyes, holding back tears. "Then be careful. Please." I tried calling Elena again that night. 3 times, no answer. I sent her a message. No reply. Her silence felt heavier with each passing hour. To me it wasn't rejection. It was a silent cry. A plea for someone to break through the cage around her. The next morning, I met Julian for coffee. I told him about Grant and Dexter. His face went pale. "This is worse than I thought," he muttered. "If Vaughn is involved, you're not just dealing with a manipulative husband. You're dealing with criminals who know how to cover their tracks." "So what do I do?" I asked. Julian leaned in, voice low. "You could take this to law enforcement. But listen to me, Malcolm. If you do that, you'll trigger retaliation. These men will fight back hard. You need to be ready." I sat there in silence, weighing his words. Law enforcement could bring justice, but it could also put Elena in more danger. That night, I walked out to my car to clear my head. The air was cool, the street quiet. For a moment, I thought maybe I was safe. Then I saw it. All 4 of my tires slashed. The car leaned heavy on its rims. The rubber torn open like someone had taken a knife and enjoyed every second of it. I froze, my chest tight. I looked around the street, but no one was there. Still, I felt eyes on me. Watching, mocking. It was a message. Another one, just like the rock through my window, just like the dead bird. They weren't just warning me now, they were letting me know they were close. Very close. I stood in the glow of the streetlight, fists clenched, fear boiling into fury. They thought they could scare me into silence. They thought slashed tires and broken glass would make me back down. But they were wrong. I whispered into the night. "I'm not stopping. Not until Elena is free." The night after my tires were slashed, I barely slept. I sat by the window, watching the street, waiting for another shadow to move. My heart was heavy, but my mind refused to shut down. I kept thinking about Elena's words. "Dad, you don't know half of it." Then just as dawn broke, my phone buzzed. It was from Elena. Her name on a screen nearly made my chest burst. I hadn't heard from her in weeks, not directly. With shaky hands, I opened the message. "Meet me tomorrow, alone." That was it. No explanation, no details, but I didn't need more. It was enough to tell me she was reaching out, maybe for the first time. The next day, I drove to the address she had sent, a small park on the edge of town. The place was quiet, almost too quiet. I walked to a bench near the trees, scanning the path, my stomach twisting. Then I saw her, Elena. My little girl, though she wasn't so little anymore. She looked pale, her shoulders hunched, her steps slow. When she finally reached me, I could see the fear written all over her face. Dad, she whispered, her eyes darting around. We don't have much time. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back, glancing over her shoulder. She was shaking. Elena, what's going on? I asked softly. Her voice broke as she spoke. He controls everything, Dad, my money, my phone. Even the people I talk to. I don't have a life anymore. He watches me all the time. My throat tightened. I wanted to wrap her in my arms and never let go. You don't have to stay in that prison, I said. I'll get you out of it. Tears filled her eyes. I'm scared. If I fight him, he'll destroy me. He told me no one would ever believe me, that if I try to leave, he'll ruin you too. I felt a burn in my chest. Anger, helplessness, guilt. Listen to me, I said firmly, leaning close so she couldn't look away. You are not alone. I don't care what it takes. I don't care what it costs me. I will get you out. I swear it on your mother's memory. Her face crumpled, and in that moment, she let go. She threw her arms around me, burying her face in my chest. For the first time in years, I felt her like the daughter I remembered, the little girl who once ran to me after scraping her knee, who once cried into my shirt when her mother passed. I held her tight. My heart ached, but it also burned with determination. We sat like that for what felt like forever. I whispered, we'll find a way. I promise you, Elena. But then everything changed. Elena stiffened in my arms, her grip tightened. She pulled away, her eyes wide with terror. What is it? I asked quickly. She pointed toward the road, her lips trembling. I turned, and my blood ran cold. Grant's car. It pulled into the lot slowly, the sun glinting off its windshield. The engine purred, calm and steady, like a predator circling its prey. Elena's breathing grew fast, panicked. He can't see me with you, she whispered in a rush. If he does, it'll be worse. I grabbed her hand. Then let's go, right now. She shook her head violently. No, if I run he'll know, he'll punish me. The car rolled closer. I could already see Grant's silhouette behind the wheel. His posture was relaxed, too relaxed, like he already suspected something. Elena, I hissed, gripping her hand tighter. You don't have to live like this. Come with me. Her eyes filled with tears again. She pulled her hand free and stepped back, shaking her head. Not now, please Dad. Just go. The desperation in her voice tore me apart. I looked at her one last time, memorizing her face, then turned and walked toward the trees, staying low. I could feel Grant's eyes on me, even from a distance. I slipped out of the park as his car pulled into the space where Elena stood waiting, her smile forced, her fear hidden. And as I walked away, my fists clenched. I had seen enough. Elena was begging for help, even if she couldn't say it out loud. And now, I had no choice. The war had begun. I thought I had been careful at the park. I thought slipping away before Grant reached us would be enough. But the very next day he proved me wrong. It happened outside my own driveway. I was hauling groceries from the car when a sleek black SUV pulled up. The window rolled down, and there he was, Grant Holloway, sitting like a king on a throne. His eyes locked onto mine, and his smile made my skin crawl. Malcolm, he said smoothly, like we were old friends, we need to talk. I set the groceries down, my fists clenching. What do you want? He leaned an elbow on the window, his voice calm but sharp. I know you've been meeting Elena behind my back. I know you've been trying to turn her against me. His words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. I don't have to turn her against you, Grant. You're doing that all by yourself. His smile faded. His eyes narrowed. For the first time, I saw the real man under the mask, the one full of rage and control. She's my wife, he snapped. Not your daughter anymore. You had your chance to raise her. Now she belongs to me. The way he said it, belongs, made my stomach twist. Elena wasn't an object. She wasn't a possession. She was my child. She will always be my daughter, I said firmly. My voice shook, but I didn't back down. And I'll never walk away from her. Grant leaned closer, his voice dropping into a threat. You should, because if you keep pushing, you'll regret it. You don't know what I'm capable of. I could see Elena sitting in the passenger seat, her face pale, her hands trembling in her lap. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. Her silence spoke louder than anything. She was trapped between us, afraid of him, afraid for me. I wanted to reach for her, to tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't. Not with him there. The SUV pulled away, his warning hanging in the air like smoke. I stood there in my driveway, shaking with rage, groceries forgotten at my feet. For the first time, I felt truly powerless. Grant had the money. He had the law on his side. And most of all, he had fear. Fear that kept Elena silent. Fear that made people back away from him. But I couldn't stop. I wouldn't. That night, I met Julian at his office. I told him everything. Every word Grant had thrown at me. Julian rubbed his temples, deep in thought. He's trying to intimidate you, he said. Classic abuser tactics. But if we're going to fight him, we have to do it smart. We need evidence, witnesses, a strategy. Otherwise the court will just see a bitter father interfering in his daughter's marriage. I leaned forward, my voice low. Then let's prepare. Let's take him down the right way. Because I won't sit here and watch her life burn. Julian nodded slowly. All right, I'll start drafting. But Malcolm, once this starts, there's no turning back. He will retaliate. I know, I said. Let him. When I got home, the house felt colder than usual. Iris tried to reassure me, but my nerves were frayed. I kept pacing, checking the windows, listening for every noise. Hours passed, and then I saw it. A strange car, parked across the street. Engine running, headlights dim, it just sat there, idling. I stood at the window, watching, my chest tightening with each passing minute. They didn't knock on the door. They didn't get out. They just watched. It was another message. A clear one. We see you, we're here. I stayed at that window until dawn, my fists clenched, my mind racing. They thought they could scare me into silence. They thought a car in the dark would break me. But all it did was prove one thing. The fight had escalated, and I wasn't backing down. After that night with the car watching my house, I knew things were only getting worse, so I decided to stop waiting and start fighting back. With Julian's help, I gathered everything I had on Grant: bank records, shady deals, connections to men like Dexter Vaughn. We organized it into a file thick enough to choke a judge. My hands shook when I handed it over to the authorities. For the first time in weeks, I felt a little hope. Finally, I thought, someone was listening. Finally, maybe, Grant would face justice. Then a few days later, my phone rang. I froze when I saw the caller ID. It was Elena. Her voice was soft, almost broken. Dad, I need you to trust me. I sat down, gripping the phone tight. I do trust you, Elena. Always. She took a shaky breath. Then listen. The only way this ends is if you let me handle it. Grant doesn't suspect I'm helping you. If you give me everything you've found, I can get him where it hurts. But I need those files. Her words hit me like a punch. Part of me wanted to scream. No, part of me didn't believe her. But another part, the part that still saw her as my little girl, wanted so badly to believe she was finally on my side. Elena, I whispered. This is dangerous. I know, she said quickly. But I'm already in danger every day. Please, if you trust me, give me the files. I promise I'll make it right. I hesitated for hours. I talked to Iris. I called Julian. Both warned me to be careful. But in the end, blood won over logic. I handed the files to my daughter. She hugged me, tears wetting her cheeks. Thank you, Dad. You'll see. This will work. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of hope. But that hope didn't last. 3 days later, I walked into a coffee shop downtown, and there he was, Grant. Sitting at a table, laughing with 2 men I recognized from the corruption files, and in his hands spread across the table were my documents, my evidence, my work. I stopped dead in my tracks. My chest tightened, my stomach dropped. He noticed me. His smirk widened as he held up one of the papers like a trophy. Looking for this, Malcolm? My knees nearly buckled. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled outside, the world spinning. My phone buzzed. It was Elena. I answered, my voice shaking. Why, Elena? Why would you do this? Her sobs poured through the line. I had no choice. He found out about the files. He said if I didn't give them to him, he'd destroy you, Dad. He promised he'd ruin your life. I couldn't let that happen. My heart cracked in half. So you gave him everything. You handed him the knife to stab us with. Her crying grew harder. I thought I could protect you. Please believe me, Dad. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I couldn't listen anymore. My hands trembled as I lowered the phone. My own daughter, the one I was fighting for, had betrayed me. Not because she hated me. Not because she wanted to. But because Grant had poisoned her with fear so deeply, she couldn't see another way. I sank onto a bench, my head in my hands. For the first time in this war, I felt truly defeated. I had lost the evidence. I had lost the trust. And worst of all, I felt like I was losing Elena all over again. That night, I sat in the dark of my living room. Iris tried to comfort me, but nothing helped. My chest was heavy, my spirit broken. Grant had won this round, and the betrayal cut deeper than any blade. But even as tears burned my eyes, one truth kept rising in me like fire. I wasn't done. This fight wasn't over, not yet. After Elena handed those files over, something inside me broke. I walked the city like a man with no map. Every corner felt new and empty. I kept replaying her words in my head. I had no choice, and the weight of them pressed on my chest until I could hardly breathe. I sat on my porch for hours, watching people pass by, families, friends, couples laughing. It all felt like a life I used to have, a life before Grant, a life before threats and slashed tires and dead birds. I wondered if I had lost Elena for good. If the little girl who used to curl up on my lap was gone forever. Iris found me there, hunched over, the sun making the lines on my face deeper. She sat down beside me without a word. After a while she reached for my hand and said, "Malcolm Grayson, betrayal doesn't always come from hate. Sometimes it comes from fear." She didn't want to hurt you. She was scared. Her words were soft, but they cut through the fog in my head. Fear. That explained so much. It didn't make it hurt less, but it changed the shape of the pain. It turned betrayal into another kind of hurt, one I could still fight. I wiped my eyes and stood up. "I won't let her go," I told Iris. "Not like this." She nodded like she already knew. We'd been through too much to give up now. I started going over everything again. Every note, every threat, every strange phone call. I pulled the files I still had and opened them one by one. I read the contracts and the receipts and the emails with a new hunger. Julian had told me to be patient, to gather proof that would stand up in court. Now patience felt like power. 2 nights into my search, I found something that made me sit very still. Hidden in a folder of shell company paperwork was a trail of small transfers, offshore accounts, tiny deposits here and there that added up over time. Names I didn't recognize, but patterns I did. The kind of cover-up people build when they don't want anyone to see the truth. I called Julian immediately. He came over in under an hour, his face grave. I showed him the papers and pointed to the accounts. He studied them, rubbing his chin. "This is real," he said slowly. "These aren't mistakes, these are layers of protection. Beatrice Dawson has money parked all over the place." Beatrice Dawson, the matriarch. The one who had fixed things before, bought silence with a check and a smile. The woman Kyle had warned me about. Seeing her name tied to offshore accounts made my blood run cold. Julian began to connect dots like a man tracing a map. Fraud here, bribery there. Shell companies used to hide payments, a pattern of intimidation that went back years. They built an empire, he said quietly. Not just of businesses, but of influence. Courts, officials, journalists, some of them have been bought or scared into silence. I listened, heart pounding. It all made sense now. Grant wasn't acting alone. He had a whole system behind him, and that system started at the top with Beatrice. If I wanted to save Elena, I would have to go after the entire house of cards, not just the man at the center. The thought made me steady. Where betrayal had hollowed me, clarity filled the space. This was bigger than spite. This was about justice, about pulling the roots out, not just cutting branches. Iris looked at me with a small, fierce smile. "You always were stubborn," she said. "Now use it." I felt that stubbornness like armor. It wasn't blind anger anymore. It was focus. Julian started drafting a plan, not a reckless rush to the police, a precision strike, legal traps that would force the truth into the light, subpoenas, forensic accountants, witness protection for anyone who'd come forward. We would move where they thought we couldn't. We would expose where they thought they were safe. That night I sat at the kitchen table long after the lights were out. The house was quiet, except for the clock ticking. I held a cup of cold coffee and looked at the papers laid out before me. Each name, each transfer, each signature was another nail in the Dawson family's armor. I thought about Elena, about her small hands, her laugh, the way she used to call me Dad, like it was the safest word in the world. I thought about how fear had forced her into the darkest choice. I thought about my promise to Claire, to Iris, and to myself. I steeled myself. This time, I wouldn't act from hurt. I would act with precision. I would strike where it would hurt the most, at the top of their house, at Beatrice Dawson's support. I would make sure the world could no longer look away. Tomorrow, Julian said, we begin. I knew I couldn't fight the Dawson family with fists. They had money, influence, and fear on their side. If I wanted to win, I had to be smarter. So I set a trap. One afternoon, I arranged to meet Grant in a quiet parking lot on the edge of town. I knew he couldn't resist showing his power, especially face to face. Before leaving, I slipped a small recorder into my pocket. My heart pounded as I walked toward him, every step heavy with risk. He was already waiting, leaning against his sleek car like he owned the world. When he saw me, his smile was thin and sharp. "Malcolm," he said, "still fighting battles you can't win." I didn't answer. I wanted him to talk, and he did. He couldn't help himself. He leaned close, voice low but dripping with threat. "You think you can drag my name through the mud? You think you can take Elena from me? Try it, and I'll bury you. Nobody will believe you. I'll destroy everything you care about." I kept my face calm, but inside, every word felt like fire. He was handing me exactly what I needed. Proof. The second I got home, I played back the recording. My hands shook as I listened to his voice. His threats clear as day. It was the kind of evidence even he couldn't twist. Julian told me to hold it, to build a case slowly, but I wanted to see how the Dawson family would react to pressure. So I leaked part of the recording to a journalist I trusted. Just a small piece, just enough to spark questions. Within a day, the whispers began. Rumors spread through town, through business circles. Grant Holloway wasn't the golden boy people thought he was. He was a man with a dangerous temper. The fallout was immediate. He canceled meetings. He avoided public events. And most telling of all, he called Elena back home early from a visit with her friends. That same night, my phone rang. It was Elena. Her voice shook. "Dad, what did you do?" I stayed quiet for a moment, listening to her breathing. Then I said, "I did what I had to. People need to know who he really is." She started crying, but it wasn't anger. It was something else. A strange mix of fear and relief. "Dad," she whispered, "he's furious. But for the first time, he's scared too." I closed my eyes. In her voice I heard it, hope. She wanted freedom, even if she couldn't say it out loud. She was still trapped, but the chains around her were starting to crack. I thought maybe the tide was finally turning. But then Julian called me into his office. His face was tense, his tone grave. "Malcolm," he said, "you need to be careful. Dexter Vaughn isn't hiding anymore. He's moving against you in the open. Grant isn't alone, they're working together, and that means your life is on the line." I nodded, my stomach heavy. I had expected this. I had stirred the hornet's nest, and now the swarm was coming. That night, the danger hit home, literally. I woke up to the sound of glass shattering. Iris screamed. I rushed downstairs and saw the back door cracked open, the lock twisted. Someone had tried to break in. I searched the shadows, my fists clenched, but whoever it was had already fled. On the ground near the door was a crowbar, left behind in the rush. I picked it up, my hands trembling. This wasn't a warning anymore. This was war. I went back inside and held Iris close. My mind raced. They wanted to scare me into silence. But they had made a mistake. They had come into my home, and I wasn't about to let them win. After the break-in, I knew I couldn't do this alone. The threats were getting louder. The men behind them were smarter. They had money, power, and stubbornness. I needed more than anger. I needed allies who had been in the same fight and lived to tell about it. I reached out to a woman named Rachel. She used to work for Grant. I'd heard whispers she'd left town in pieces, that she'd been pushed to the edge. Finding her took time. She didn't want attention, but after a few calls and a lot of careful words, she agreed to meet me at a diner downtown. She looked older than her photo. Her hands shook when she stirred her coffee, but when she spoke, she was steady. "You don't know what that man does," she said. "He isolates you. He makes you doubt yourself. He takes everything that makes you you." Her voice broke once, then she looked up, fierce. "But I remember, and I remember names. I remember accounts. I remember what they paid me to do." I listened. Every word she said was another brick pulled from the wall they'd built around their lies. She showed me receipts. She named people. She described meetings where Beatrice had sat across the table and closed deals with a smile like nothing mattered. "You'll testify?" I asked. Hope and fear tangled in my chest. Rachel looked at me for a long moment. "If you can protect me," she said. "If I don't feel like I'll disappear, then yes, I'll stand up." That was all I needed to hear. Proof from someone who had been inside, a voice that could name names. Julian worked fast. He drafted witness protection steps. He arranged for Rachel to meet investigators in a safe place. The plan moved forward like a well-oiled machine. Each small step felt like a victory. But the Dawsons were not blind. News traveled fast, and Beatrice Dawson was not a woman who took losing quietly. One afternoon, a driver arrived at my house with an envelope. The card inside was heavy, the paper thick and embossed. It said simply, "Let it go, Malcolm Grayson. Money can fix this." A check lay tucked beneath the card. The amount was obscene, enough to make most men think twice. I stared at it for a long time. Money could fix a lot of things. It could buy silence. It could buy comfort. But not this, not my daughter, not her safety. I called Julian and Iris into the living room and showed them the check. Julian's jaw tightened. Iris shook her head, anger in her eyes. "He's trying to buy your conscience," Iris said. "Don't take it." She sat down hard and gripped my hand. "You said you wouldn't walk away from Elena. Don't start now." I picked the check up like it had burned me. I called the number on the card. A polite voice answered. "Miss Dawson sends her regards," the man said. "She believes you would prefer to settle this privately." I slammed the phone down. That night, Julian came by with papers and a plan. "Beatrice made a direct move," he said. "That means she feels pressure. It also means she'll push harder. Cornered people are the most dangerous." He drew out a list of legal traps, subpoenas, asset freezes, motions to compel testimony, and a plan to publicize the evidence at the right moment so the Dawsons couldn't bury it. We worked late into the night, each call, each signature cut into their armor. I felt like an archaeologist chipping away at a tomb. The closer I got, the more fragile their empire looked. Around midnight I heard a soft knock at the door. I moved quietly, not wanting to startle anyone. When I opened it, Elena slipped in like a shadow. She was wrapped in a coat, hair messy, eyes wide and raw. "Dad," she whispered, voice barely audible. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her, like someone hiding from a storm. She looked exhausted, like years of fear were written under her eyes. I pulled her into my arms without thinking. She smelled like the night and a small breath of relief. She let herself be held for a second, then pulled back and looked at me with a strange mix of shame and urgency. "They're planning something," she breathed. Her words spilled out fast. "They think they can make you disappear. Beatrice wants you to take the money and walk away. Grant, he's louder now. He says if you keep pushing, they'll make it so no one believes you. He's lining people up. They're talking about setting you up." My heart hit my ribs so hard I could feel it. "Who?" I asked, but she shook her head. "I don't know all the names yet, but they're moving fast. They've been watching Julian, watching the reporters. They think they can silence anyone who talks." She pressed her hand to my arm, fingers like clamps. Please don't go out alone. Please be careful. I looked at her and saw the scared woman from the photograph. The one who had sent me the text and the one who had whispered to meet alone in the park. I saw her wanting to be strong and not knowing how. Rachel will testify, I said quietly. Julian has protection ready. We're not walking away. Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded, then folded into me again for a second, like a child clinging to safety. Then she moved back, smoothing her coat, trying to make her face steady. Dad, they're planning something against you. Her whisper hung in the air like a cold promise. I felt the weight of it settle over the house. This fight had become more dangerous than I'd thought. But now I had a witness, a plan, and my daughter back in my home, however briefly. We would not be easy to scare. We would not be bought. We would stand and push until their house of lies fell apart. One witness, one paper, one legal trap at a time. Just when I thought things were turning, they hit me with a blow I didn't see coming. I had been careful. Julian had been careful. We had built our case slow, piece by piece. But the Dawsons had deeper pockets and darker reach than I imagined. One afternoon, 2 officers showed up at my door. They didn't knock politely. They pushed through like they were carrying the weight of the world. One of them held a warrant. The words on that paper were simple and brutal: arrest for harassment. Malcolm Grayson, you are under arrest, the officer said. His voice was flat. There was no warmth, no hesitation. I felt my knees go weak. Neighbors gathered on their lawns watching like it was a show. I heard whispers. I saw the pity in some faces and the curiosity in others. I had never felt smaller. Humiliation burned hotter than fear. They cuffed my hands behind my back and led me out. My heart pounded. I could hear Iris's voice cracking as she shouted through the screen door, "This is a mistake." But the officers didn't listen. Someone had already fed them the lie. Someone with money and lawyers and influence. In the squad car, the world slid past the window like a film. I watched the house where I'd raised Elena shrink away. I thought of Claire's picture on my mantle. I thought of every bedtime story, every scraped knee, every promise I had sworn I'd keep. Now I was a headline in my own life. They took me to a holding cell. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The bench was hard. My hands were still raw from the cuffs. I sat there breathing, trying to make sense of the smear that had landed on my name. How could they spin this? How could they use the law against a father? Hours passed, time stretched. I kept replaying everything, every rock through the window, every slashed tire, every whispered threat. Had I missed something? Had someone framed me so perfectly the police had no choice but to act? Then in the middle of that gray, a guard opened the cell door. "You have a visitor," he said. My heart jumped so hard, I thought it would burst. Elena walked in like she had been pulled by a string. She looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, her face folded into something I hadn't seen in a long time, real raw regret. She sat across from me on the bench, her hands twisting in her coat. For a long second, neither of us spoke. The clink of distant chains and the murmur of the station filled the silence. "Dad," she finally said. Her voice was small. "I'm so sorry." I wanted to lash out, to yell that she'd betrayed me, to ask how she could let them put me through this. But I knew the shape of fear on her face. I had seen it in that photograph. I had felt it in her hands at the park. So I kept my voice steady. "Elena, what happened?" I asked. She swallowed hard, tears shining. "They set it up," she whispered. "Grant, Beatrice. They bribed officials. They made false statements. They made it look like you were the one harassing us." Her hands trembled. I didn't know until today. I didn't know how deep it went. My chest felt hollow. "Why didn't you tell me?" It came out softer than I meant. She flinched. "Because I was afraid. Because when I tried, they told me if I said anything, they'd ruin everything. They said they'd make people laugh at us. They said they'd take Iris away from you. They threatened everything." She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. "I was stupid, Dad. I thought if I complied for a while, I could keep you safe. But they turned it around. They used me." She leaned forward and pulled something small and folded from her coat. Her hands shook as she handed it to me. I recorded them, she said. A week ago, in the study. I hid it. I kept it because I was terrified. But today I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I opened the small recorder and pressed play. Their voices filled the small cell like thunder. Grant's voice, sharp and cold. Beatrice's laugh, low and certain. "Make sure he can't speak without looking guilty," one of them said. "We'll have the paperwork go through, pay off the right person. He'll be seen as the attacker." I felt the air leave my lungs. My hands gripped the recorder like it was a lifeline. This was it. Proof, raw and ugly. The very weapon I needed. In the dark hour of my shame, Elena had handed me the truth. She looked up at me, tears streaking her face. "Dad, I was wrong. I need your help." I wanted to hold her and never let go. The betrayal still hurt, but now it was folded into something else, relief and a fierce new hope. I sat back, the pieces aligning in my mind. The recordings, the offshore accounts, Rachel's testimony, the leaks Julian had arranged. It all fit together like a map finally seen from above. They thought they had buried me. They thought paying off officials and planting lies would end this. But they had only built the trap that would snap shut on them. "Okay," I said, my voice low, steady. "Then we fight. Together." She nodded, the tremor in her hands easing. I felt something harden inside me. Not anger the way it had been before, but a focused resolve. This was the moment the tide would turn for real. Outside, the world kept moving, unaware. Inside that small cell, with a recording between us and a daughter finally standing by my side, I felt the first real chance at justice rise. When Elena gave me that recording, it felt like someone had handed me back my voice. For weeks they had made me look like the villain. Now I had proof, clear and undeniable, that the Dawsons were the ones pulling the strings. Julian wasted no time. He worked night and day, preparing the case. "This is it, Malcolm," he told me. "We play this right and it all comes crashing down." The court hearing was packed. Reporters lined the hallways. My hands shook as I sat at the defense table, but I wasn't alone anymore. Elena sat behind me, her eyes locked on mine, silent but strong. For the first time in a long while, I felt like a father again. When the judge entered, the room went silent. Beatrice and Grant sat across the aisle, smug as ever, lawyers at their sides. Beatrice looked polished, like she believed no one could touch her. Grant leaned back in his chair, smirking. Julian stood and pressed play on the recording. The voices of Grant and Beatrice filled the courtroom. "Make sure he can't speak without looking guilty," Beatrice's voice purred. Grant's voice followed, sharp and cruel. "Pay off the right people. He'll be seen as the attacker." The sound echoed off the walls. You could feel the shift in the room. The smirk vanished from Grant's face. Beatrice's hand tightened on the table. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Julian didn't say much. He didn't have to. The recording spoke louder than any argument. The judge's gavel came down hard. "This court orders a full investigation into Grant and Beatrice Dawson for evidence tampering, bribery and conspiracy." Gasps filled the courtroom. Reporters rushed for the door, eager to spread the news. The Dawson name, once untouchable, was suddenly stained. Within hours, headlines exploded. "Dawson family under investigation. Recording exposes bribery scheme." The media swarmed their estate, cameras flashing, questions shouted. Neighbors turned their backs, business partners hesitated. The image they had built for decades began to crumble in days. And then came the final crack. Dexter Vaughn, the man who had always backed them, who had stood in their shadow as muscle and money. He pulled out, quietly but decisively. His lawyer announced that Dexter had no further association with the Dawson family. In plain words, he had abandoned them to sink alone. Beatrice's smile was gone now. Grant's arrogance turned into rage. They were no longer untouchable. They were drowning, and the whole world could see it. That night, Elena came home. She didn't sneak in this time. She walked through the front door with a small bag in her hand. Beers hugged her so tightly she cried. "For the first time in years, my house felt whole again, even if just for a moment." "Dad," she said softly, "can I stay here at least until things settle down?" I nodded, my throat tight. This is your home, Alina. Always. We sat at the dinner table together that night. No cameras, no lawyers, no lies, just family. For the first time in a long time, I felt something I thought I had lost: hope. Not just for justice in court, but for healing, for my daughter, for me, for all of us. But hope is fragile, because even as I let myself breathe, even as Elena laughed softly with Iris, I knew the fight wasn't over. Grant wasn't done. I found out later that night. A message slipped under my door. No name, no signature, just 6 words written in bold ink. This isn't finished. I'll destroy you. It was his handwriting. I would know it anywhere. Grant Dawson, cornered and humiliated, wasn't going to let go quietly. His pride was too deep, his hatred too strong, and that warning, that promise, was his last desperate play. The Dawsons were collapsing. Their empire was cracking. But I knew one thing for sure: a wounded animal is the most dangerous, and Grant Dawson was about to show just how dangerous he could be. The morning after that note slid under my door, I knew it was coming. Grant wasn't the type to walk away. He was proud. He was vicious. And when proud, vicious men fall, they try to drag someone down with them. I didn't have to wait long. I was standing in my driveway, picking up the paper, when a black car pulled up. Grant stepped out, his suit wrinkled, his eyes wild. He looked nothing like the man who once walked with swagger and charm. He looked desperate. "Malcolm," he shouted, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You think you've won? You think you can take everything from me?" I stayed still, my chest tightened, but I forced my voice to stay calm. "You did this to yourself, Grant. Not me." He marched toward me, finger jabbing the air. "I'll ruin you. I'll bury you." Spit flew from his mouth as he screamed. But before he could come any closer, 2 squad cars pulled up, lights flashing. Officers stepped out fast, their hands firm and steady, one read from a warrant. "Grant Dawson, you're under arrest for fraud, abuse, and conspiracy." Grant froze. His face went pale, then red. He shouted, cursed, struggled, but the cuffs went on. The neighbors, the same ones who once looked at me with suspicion, now stared at him with disgust. For the first time the roles were reversed. He was the criminal. He was the disgrace. Later that week it was Beatrice's turn. The investigators had torn through her accounts, her offshore holdings, her shell companies. The evidence was undeniable: fraud, bribery, laundering. I saw the headlines: Beatrice Dawson indicted. The woman who once thought she could buy silence was now stripped of her influence. Her name was mud. Her empire crumbled overnight, and then came the day that mattered most, the day Elena testified. The courtroom was silent as she walked to the stand. She looked small, fragile even, but when she spoke, her voice carried across the room, trembling at first, then growing stronger with every word. She told the truth, about the threats, about the lies, about the night she watched them plot against me. She handed over the recording, explained how she hid it, and for the first time she stood against them in front of the world. I sat there, watching her, my hands clenched tight. Pride swelled in my chest so strong it hurt. She wasn't just my daughter again. She was brave. She was free. When she finished, she looked at me. Our eyes met, and it felt like the years of distance, the silence, the betrayal, it all cracked. The bond wasn't perfect yet. It was bruised, scarred, but it was alive again. After court, Iris slipped her arm through mine and whispered, "You have your family back, Malcolm. That's worth more than any victory." Her smile was soft, but it carried the weight of everything we had endured. That night, I sat alone for a while thinking. I thought about how the Dawsons had built their power, on fear, on control, on lies. But power built like that always eats itself, always collapses. And I thought about what had carried me through. Not money, not influence, just love. A father's stubborn love, and the truth. Those 2 things are stronger than any empire built on fear. The moral was simple, and I felt it deep in my bones. No chain of fear lasts forever. Love and truth always break it in the end. The Dawsons had fallen. My daughter was safe. My home was whole again, and for the first time in years I could breathe without weight on my chest. Justice wasn't just about winning, it was about healing. And that night, I finally felt both. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments.